The Science of Success: How to Rewire Your Brain for Greatness by Audible Insights. Introduction. Your daily life feels like a maze of unmet possibilities. You see glimpses of what could be, an idea for a better career, an impulse to take a bold step forward, a brief surge of motivation to break free from old patterns. Yet something seems to hold you back at the very moment you should leap forward. It's a subtle force, almost invisible, part habit, part fear, part self-doubt. And it whispers that maybe you're not ready, that maybe you should stay where you are. You're tired of hearing that voice. The deeper truth is that your mind is working exactly as it was designed, to keep you safe, comfortable, and protected from perceived threats. Unfortunately, those threats include risk, challenge, and any unfamiliar path. But success, real, life-altering, lasting success, demands that you venture beyond your comfort zone and embrace uncertainty. Your brain, in its default state, resists this with every fiber. This audiobook promises one thing: a fundamental shift from surviving to thriving. You won't just learn a new routine or pick up a few clever tactics. You will rewire the way you think, turning your innate fears into fuel and your self-doubt into self-trust. You'll discover that success isn't a finish line you cross. It's a way of being you can embody. And once you step into that new version of yourself, the life you've always envisioned will no longer be a dream. It will be your reality. Chapter 1. The Invisible Cage. Consider a moment when you felt that a goal was just beyond your grasp. Perhaps you wanted to start a business, change careers, or even adopt a healthier lifestyle. You might have mapped out the steps, told a friend about your ambition, or read every piece of advice you could find. Yet, for reasons you couldn't quite articulate, you hesitated. Days turned into weeks, and the momentum slipped away. This isn't mere laziness. It's the result of an invisible cage, a mental framework designed to protect you from what your mind perceives as danger. The challenge is that danger, in this context, can be something as ordinary as stepping outside familiar territory. Your brain, developed over millennia, excels at identifying threats and orchestrating avoidance. In ancient times, this was crucial for survival. Now, however, that same mechanism can sabotage your pursuits by labeling the unknown as a peril to flee. You may notice it as the voice that says, "You're not qualified," or "What if you fail?" or even, "What if this disrupts your comfortable life?" These thoughts swirl in your head until the easiest path is to remain exactly where you are. What's most insidious is that these limitations often appear logical. You rationalize why it's not the right time, or how you should wait until you're more experienced. The invisible cage isn't made of metal bars. It's constructed from beliefs. And as long as you treat those beliefs as incontrovertible facts, you remain trapped. This cage is so subtle that you can remain confined for years, sometimes decades, without realizing that your true potential has been systematically smothered. So how do you break free? The first step is to recognize that the cage exists. The constraints you feel aren't universal truths. They're self-imposed boundaries formed by your own protective instincts. A helpful exercise is to reflect on a moment when you overcame an obstacle you once thought insurmountable. Maybe you learned a difficult skill or handled a situation you initially felt ill-equipped to face. In that moment, your sense of limitation dissolved, replaced by evidence that you could do more than you believed. That memory is living proof that your constraints are malleable, dependent on perception and context. Next, begin questioning the emotional undercurrent driving your hesitation. Is it fear of failure, fear of judgment, or fear of success itself? Fear thrives on vagueness. It wants you to remain uncertain about what's stopping you. By naming and examining it, you rob it of much of its power. For instance, if you realize you're afraid of public failure, you can plan a small-scale trial, gather supportive allies, or learn from mentors who face the same fear. The moment you move from general, paralyzing fear to targeted, addressable concerns, you're already weakening the bars of the cage. A powerful way to step beyond this cage is to take a micro-action that directly contradicts your old limitations. If you believe you're not ready to launch a project, choose a small, immediate step, sending an email to a potential collaborator or drafting a simple outline. Such steps accomplish more than checking boxes. They actively challenge your assumptions. You give your brain evidence that fear is not an impenetrable wall, but a hurdle you can and do jump over. Each time you act in spite of uncertainty, you're teaching your mind a new pattern. I can progress even when it feels risky. Imagine the experience of actually doing this. Adrenaline courses through you as you step into something new, but instead of halting at the threshold, you push onward. The feeling that follows isn't just relief, it's an expanded sense of self. You've proven to yourself that the boundaries of your old identity can be stretched, and once that door cracks open, you're unlikely to go back to being confined by a fear you now recognize as fluid rather than fixed. The invisible cage also depends on external reinforcement. Perhaps well-meaning friends or family members have cautioned you to be careful or don't bite off more than you can chew. Their words may reinforce your cage. While they may have your best interests at heart, their advice can inadvertently feed your fear-driven beliefs. This doesn't mean you must abandon these relationships, but it does mean you must be selective about how much weight you give their caution. When you build a support system of people who embrace growth, your new perspective gains the reinforcement it needs to solidify. As you close this first chapter, reflect on your life and identify one area in which you have felt repeatedly stuck or hesitant. Don't simply recall the frustration. Dig deeper to see the pattern of thoughts and emotions that keep you in place. Visualize each of these repetitive doubts as part of a framework that has always been optional, not mandatory. Feel the shift in your perspective as you see that what holds you back is not an external lock, but an internal belief that can be questioned, challenged, and rewritten. Your old cage will try to convince you to stay, but the moment you realize it's merely an illusion, you'll notice the door was never locked. The journey of changing your entire internal framework begins with this crucial realization. Your limitations are not walls in the real world. They're stories in your mind. Recognizing this is the first fracture in the cage. The next chapters will deepen this crack until it collapses entirely, setting you free to move forward in ways you never thought possible. Chapter 2. Thoughts are not facts. Take a moment to listen to the relentless chatter in your mind. It might say, "I can't do this. I'm going to fail," or "I'm not like those successful people I admire." These thoughts seem to hold incredible weight, echoing until they feel like indisputable truths. Yet consider how many times you formed beliefs about people, about opportunities, about yourself that turned out to be wrong or incomplete. Your mind is a powerful storyteller, and it doesn't always discriminate between what's accurate and what's simply habitual. The shift this chapter offers is profound yet surprisingly simple. Thoughts are not facts. They are mental events shaped by your past experiences, emotional states, and automatic biases. If you believed everything your mind says, you'd be riding an endless roller coaster of contradictory truths. Sometimes you might feel on top of the world. Other times, you might see no hope at all. Recognizing that you have a choice about which thoughts to engage can liberate you from the tyranny of mental loops that keep you small. One of the most direct ways to implement this is to observe your thoughts without judgment. Imagine you're at a train station, watching each train of thought come and go. You don't have to board every train that arrives. You can allow some to pass. Practically speaking, this can look like taking a brief pause when an intense thought arises. Maybe you close your eyes and take a deep breath. Instead of reacting, you label it as a thought. I'm noticing the thought that I'm not prepared. This tiny act of labeling creates distance, a moment of clarity, in which you can decide whether the thought is valid or simply a repeated pattern. Another approach is to question the thought's accuracy. Ask yourself, is this always true? Has there ever been a time it wasn't true? If you're convinced that you can't handle pressure, recall instances when you actually did handle intense situations, like completing a challenging project or calmly resolving a personal crisis. The intention isn't to argue with your mind all day, but rather to show your brain that it often overgeneralizes. When you prove your mind wrong in even a single instance, you puncture the illusion of absolute truth. A deeper effect of this practice is that you become less reactive. When you recognize thoughts as mental events, not facts, you gain emotional resilience. If your mind says, "Everyone will judge you if you fail," you learn to respond with, "That's one possibility, but not guaranteed." Instead of being tossed around by every negative possibility, you stay grounded, capable of taking action even when uncertainty lingers. This is crucial for success because the path to your goals will inevitably include obstacles, criticisms, and missteps. If every negative thought about these setbacks sends you into a spiral, you'll never stay the course long enough to see real results. In implementing this, picture yourself in the midst of a challenging situation, perhaps delivering a presentation. A thought pops up. You're going to stumble and forget what to say. You could let that comment define your entire experience, fueling anxiety that undermines your performance. Or you could note it, label it, and deliberately shift your focus back to your preparation or the flow of your content. Over time, this becomes second nature. You're effectively training your brain to recognize negativity as just another mental event, not a forecast set in stone. You might wonder if ignoring negative thoughts means you risk ignoring potential risks. The goal isn't denial, but discernment. Realistic considerations, like needing more rehearsal, are helpful. Paralyzing assumptions, like "I'll never succeed," are not. By disentangling these, you develop a clearer perspective, allowing you to act intelligently without succumbing to the illusions generated by fear. As you lean into this new way of relating to your thoughts, you might experience moments of quiet clarity. These moments can feel unsettling because you're no longer swept along by the usual swirl of mental chatter. Embrace the stillness. In this space, you discover genuine confidence, the kind that arises not from blind optimism, but from knowing you're free to choose your responses rather than being dictated by every passing worry. You might also notice a ripple effect in your daily life. People around you may see you as calmer, more grounded, and more present. In conversations, instead of mentally rehearsing your worries, you'll find yourself genuinely listening. When it comes time to make decisions, you'll weigh options more carefully because you're not racing to escape the panic created by anxious thoughts. The subtle yet powerful outcome is that your actions become more aligned with your true priorities rather than with fleeting mental scripts. As this chapter draws to a close, reflect on one repeating negative thought that often holds you back. Maybe it's a statement about your worth, your capabilities, or your future prospects. Visualize that thought as a line of text floating through your mind. Now imagine stepping back, watching it drift by and gently reminding yourself, this is just a thought, not a factual report. Sense the immediate relief that comes when you separate yourself from that mental narrative. This is the beginning of freedom. You might find yourself still feeling doubt, which is natural. But the seed of change has been planted. You now know that you don't have to be a hostage to every negative sentence that crosses your mind. This newfound distance will be invaluable as you continue building the mental architecture necessary for greatness. In the next chapter, you'll learn how to take one of the most paralyzing thoughts we all encounter, fear, and use it as a catalyst for powerful action rather than a barrier that holds you in place. Chapter 3. Rewiring Fear. Fear arrives in many forms. Sometimes it's a cold jolt in your stomach when you realize just how big your dream is. Other times it's the slow burn of anxiety that shadows you all day. Regardless of its flavor, fear often feels like a stop sign, a warning that you're about to cross into dangerous territory. Yet if you look closer, fear can be a guiding beacon, telling you exactly where to go if you want to grow. This chapter proposes a radical shift. View fear not as a sign to retreat, but as a signpost pointing toward your next breakthrough. Instead of interpreting fear as a threat, recognize it as energy, powerful, pulsing energy that can be redirected into constructive action. This isn't about denying the existence of fear or pretending it doesn't affect you. It's about harnessing its electricity, much like a surfer harnesses the power of a wave to move forward rather than be drowned by it. The first step is to listen to the message fear brings. Fear rarely appears without reason. It signals that something meaningful is on the line. Maybe it's your reputation, or a relationship, or a cherished dream. By acknowledging what's at stake, you give yourself a reason to care deeply. Ask yourself, what is this fear trying to protect? If you're terrified of sharing your creative work, for example, your fear might be guarding your sense of identity, worried that rejection would be devastating. Once you identify this protective instinct, you can address it more wisely, perhaps by seeking constructive feedback or starting with a supportive audience, rather than diving headlong into the most intimidating scenario. Yet acknowledging fear's origin is only half the puzzle. You must transform that charged sensation into forward momentum. A potent technique is to pair your fear with a vision of the outcome you desire. Whenever you feel the tremor of dread, consciously connect it to the reason you're pushing forward. Yes, this might be scary, but this is the step that brings me closer to launching my dream project. You're effectively telling your brain, the possibility of a meaningful reward outweighs the potential risk. Over time, your mind starts associating the feeling of fear with the anticipation of success, rather than a warning of doom. Imagine standing on a stage, about to deliver a keynote speech. Your heart pounds, your palms sweat, and your instinct might be to run. Instead, you remind yourself, this tension is just my system gearing up for something important. It means I'm alive, present, and capable of something significant. You transform that jolt of energy into expressive gestures, clear articulation, and heightened focus. Far from hindering you, fear now amplifies your performance, making you sharper and more compelling. This doesn't come from a single shift in thinking. It's cultivated by repeatedly choosing to see fear as fuel, not a full stop. Another strategy is to dissect the specifics of what fear tells you. Suppose you're afraid of failing in a new venture. Fear conjures a parade of horrors: loss of reputation, financial ruin, endless embarrassment. Write down every catastrophic scenario. Next to each, consider a real plan for how you'd respond if it happened. For instance, if my business fails, I'll use the experience to refine my idea and pivot. Confronting the imagined worst-case scenario often reveals it to be more manageable than you initially believed. This exposure helps neutralize the paralyzing grip of fear. Instead of a vague boogeyman, you see a set of problems with potential solutions. This approach aligns with how professional athletes or stunt performers operate. They're not fearless. They're trained to manage and even welcome fear as an integral part of high-stakes performance. They plan meticulously for what could go wrong, but they don't let that planning turn into a reason to hold back. Instead, they use it to build confidence that they can handle anything the moment throws at them. Your challenge is different, but the principle is the same. Treat fear not as a stop sign, but as a prompt to prepare and adapt, then to push forward. As you implement this in your daily life, you'll notice an immediate difference in how you approach uncomfortable opportunities. Maybe you've always thought about asking for a promotion but found yourself stalling the conversation. Now, instead of waiting for the fear to go away, you harness that nervous energy to prepare your talking points and schedule the meeting. You walk in with your heart still pounding, but you channel that adrenaline into clarity and assertiveness. Afterward, you realize fear didn't vanish. It simply transformed into focused drive. In time, your brain recalibrates. It begins to register that fear no longer stops you from acting. Each time you face a fear and move forward, you collect a new experience. I can handle this. Collect enough such experiences, and your baseline response to fear changes from flight to engagement. You begin seeking out challenges that once terrified you, knowing they often hide your greatest opportunities. This evolution changes more than just your behavior. It transforms your identity. You're no longer someone who is blocked by fear. You're someone who sees fear as a green light to grow. Before moving on, contemplate one area of life where fear has consistently held you back. It might be a conversation you're avoiding, a career move you keep postponing, or a personal project you've been too hesitant to share. Acknowledge the real emotional charge beneath your reluctance. Perhaps it's tied to how you view yourself or how you believe others see you. Then choose a small, meaningful step that uses this fear as energy.
The key is to do it while the fear is present, letting that charged feeling fuel action rather than paralysis. In the chapters to come, you'll be continuing to lay new mental tracks in your mind. With the cage identified and the distinction between thoughts and facts made clear, you've now seen fear for what it is. An electrical signal you can rewire.
Next, you'll address another crucial aspect of transformation, ensuring that your desires and your core beliefs align so you can break free from the subtle contradiction that keeps you stuck in old patterns. Chapter 4. Desire without doubt. Picture the goal that lights up your imagination. It could be starting your own venture, achieving financial independence, or even forging deeper connections in your personal life. You may feel a spark of excitement whenever you envision this possibility, but underneath, there's a subtle current of doubt. This internal contradiction, strong desire paired with nagging disbelief, creates friction that halts progress. It's like stepping on the gas while pulling the handbrake. To create a life where your ambitions flow naturally into results, you must align desire with genuine belief. When you truly believe in your goal, doubt no longer saps your momentum. Instead, each step you take feels like part of an inevitable journey rather than a desperate gamble. Cultivating this alignment isn't about blind optimism. It's about letting your core identity catch up to your vision, so you can act in ways that mirror the future you want. Begin by examining the origin of your doubt. Often, it stems from past failures or an inherited worldview that success is reserved for certain kinds of people. Maybe your upbringing instilled in you the idea that you should aim lower, or that extraordinary achievements are unrealistic. These beliefs lurk in your mind as silent saboteurs, questioning every bold aspiration you have. Shine a light on them by writing them out. Ask, what is the exact statement I tell myself that conflicts with my desire? Perhaps it's, I'm not smart enough, or people from my background don't do this, or I'll mess it up like I did before. Naming these doubts is crucial because it makes them tangible, something you can address directly. Next, generate experiences or memories that contradict these limiting narratives. If you believe you're not resourceful enough to build your dream career, think of any time you were exceptionally resourceful. Maybe you improvised a solution to a tough personal problem or learned new skills on the fly. Each real example acts like a crack in the wall of disbelief, letting in a beam of possibility. Over time, these cracks widen, and you realize that your old beliefs were oversimplifications, not eternal verdicts. It's also useful to cultivate a deep emotional resonance with your goal. Logic alone rarely overrides deeply embedded doubt. Spend time immersing yourself in the details of your desired outcome. If your dream is to become financially independent, vividly picture what your daily routine looks like, how you carry yourself, and the people you impact through your freedom. Allow yourself to feel, in your body, a sense of calm, confidence, and abundance. When you repeatedly practice this, your mind begins to see your goal as a lived reality rather than a distant fantasy. Emotional immersion is powerful because it speaks directly to your subconscious, reinforcing that your desire is more than a passing wish. It's something worth wiring into your identity. Now match this inner work with outer action. The simplest way to beat doubt is to accumulate small wins that prove your new belief system valid. Suppose your goal is to write a book, but you doubt your capacity to commit. Start writing just 200 words a day. Keep it small but consistent. Each day you show your mind that you can indeed follow through. After a few weeks, you'll have tangible progress, and the voice of doubt weakens, replaced by evidence of possibility. This evidence-based approach prevents your transformation from becoming an empty mantra. You aren't just saying, I believe I can do this. You're showing yourself daily that it's true. One might ask, but what if my doubts are about outcomes I can't fully control? For instance, maybe you worry that external factors will impede your progress, like market conditions or lack of support from influential people. Recognize that while you can't guarantee every external variable, you can control your commitment to learning, adapting, and persisting. When you root your belief in your capacity to respond effectively, rather than in a guarantee of a perfect outcome, you free yourself from paralyzing fear of failure. You step into a mindset that says, whatever happens, I'll handle it, which paradoxically makes success more likely because you remain flexible and proactive. As you practice aligning desire and belief, you might experience friction at first. This is entirely normal. Your brain has spent years operating under a certain framework, and it won't transform overnight. Patience and consistency are your allies. Celebrate small milestones. The first day you felt genuine excitement, without the usual wave of skepticism, or the moment you realized your negative self-talk had lost some of its bite. These small victories are markers of real progress in rewiring your mind. Notice how your energy changes when desire and belief align. Instead of feeling like you must force yourself to work, you'll experience bursts of motivation that seem to come from within. You'll take initiative spontaneously, spotting opportunities you might have missed before because your mind was too busy doubting. Even failure, when it occurs, won't feel like a final indictment of your abilities. It becomes a data point, a chance to refine your approach, because your core belief in your capacity to succeed remains intact. Consider a simple but transformative exercise. Each morning, write down one clear statement of your goal and follow it with a brief sentence that affirms your growing belief in it. For instance, today, I commit to bringing my business idea closer to launch. I believe in my capacity to do what it takes. Then, in the evening, list 1 or 2 concrete steps you took that day to move forward. This daily ritual aligns your mind with action, steadily transforming the old narrative of "I wish I could" into "I am making this happen." As we near the end of this chapter, pause and sense the subtle shift that occurs when you allow yourself to want something deeply without simultaneously tearing yourself down. Feel how much mental energy is freed when you're not wrestling with contradictory impulses. This liberated energy becomes fuel for creativity, resilience, and long-term perseverance. When you operate with desire unencumbered by doubt, you'll notice how quickly you can move toward your goals without the usual fits and starts. This momentum builds upon itself, and soon you'll be sustaining a pace of growth that once seemed unattainable. Our next focus will be your emotional landscape. You've laid the groundwork. You see the cage, you question your thoughts, you harness your fear, and you align your desires with genuine belief. Yet if you can't manage the emotional ups and downs that come with any bold pursuit, you'll find yourself derailed. The upcoming chapter will show you how to master your emotional states in a way that not only keeps you moving, but elevates your performance at every step of your journey. Chapter 5. Emotional Mastery. You know the rush of inspiration that strikes at midnight, urging you to lay out an ambitious plan for the future. Perhaps you scribble notes, brainstorming a vision that sparks excitement and optimism. Then morning arrives, and the world feels heavier. The same plan that felt exhilarating just hours ago now seems overwhelming or unrealistic. The shift is purely emotional. Emotions are powerful drivers of action, but they can also derail you if they swing uncontrollably. This chapter's promise is that you can learn to direct your emotional energy rather than be at its mercy. Emotional mastery isn't about suppressing your feelings or pretending everything is fine when it isn't. Instead, it's the ability to experience emotions fully and channel them productively. Think of your emotions as a river. If you ignore them, they might flood your life without warning. If you try to dam them up, you could break under the pressure. But if you learn to guide that river, you tap into its immense power to move you forward. Begin by recognizing that emotions offer data about your inner world, highlighting your needs, fears, or desires. Take frustration, for instance. It's often a signal that you're hitting obstacles you haven't addressed. Instead of letting that frustration fester, explore its root. Are you pushing against a challenge without the right resources? Are you repeatedly encountering the same setback because you haven't adapted your strategy? By seeing frustration as an alert, you shift from brooding over what's wrong to actively finding solutions. Next, practice emotional labeling. When you notice a strong feeling rising, be it anger, excitement, dread, or joy, label it mentally. This is anger, or I'm feeling excitement. This practice doesn't trivialize the emotion, it acknowledges it. Strangely enough, naming an emotion can reduce its intensity. It's as though by calling it out, you step into a more objective position, allowing you to respond rather than react. For instance, if you're dealing with anger toward a colleague, labeling that anger in your mind can create the tiniest gap between you and a hasty reaction. In that gap, you choose a more constructive response, maybe a calm conversation or a request for clarification. Another aspect of emotional mastery is learning to shift your state deliberately. Emotions often appear tied to circumstances, but you have more influence over your mood than you realize. Consider the power of physical action. If you're anxious, a quick set of jumping jacks or a brisk walk can alleviate some of that nervous energy, giving you a clearer head. Or reflect on the environment you're in. Lighting, noise level, clutter. Small changes can have a disproportionately large impact on how you feel. Don't underestimate the power of choosing a setting that aligns with the emotional state you want to cultivate. There's also value in planning for emotional fluctuations. If you know you'll face a challenging task, prepare your emotional toolkit in advance. You might schedule short breaks for activities that boost your mood, like a quick chat with a supportive friend or listening to a song that uplifts you. Far from being trivial, these deliberate resets can keep you from plunging into a negative emotional spiral. Over time, you develop a heightened awareness of your emotional cycles, making it easier to proactively manage them. One transformative perspective is to see emotional states as temporary. Even the most intense feeling will change if given time. Recognizing this can help you ride out difficult emotions without catastrophizing. When disappointment or sadness hits, you can remind yourself, "This is how I feel right now, but it won't last forever." This isn't an empty platitude. It's an observation about the nature of emotions. You've felt differently in the past, and you will feel differently in the future. Accepting the ebb and flow lessens the panic that arises when negative emotions surface, which in turn reduces their power to derail you. Imagine you're about to pitch a big idea to an influential figure. You might feel a swirl of excitement and anxiety. Emotional mastery allows you to use that anxiety as fuel, heightening your focus and alertness. You breathe into the feeling, acknowledging it, then direct that energy into crafting your words with precision. Rather than letting anxiety paralyze you, you channel it into a performance that's both authentic and compelling. In daily life, emotional mastery manifests in smaller but equally impactful ways. It might mean noticing you're discouraged after receiving critical feedback and consciously deciding to revisit that feedback once you've calmed down. Or it could be recognizing that you're restless and injecting a quick change of scene, stepping outside for fresh air, or reorganizing your workspace to reset your perspective. These small actions accumulate into a pattern of self-regulation, ensuring emotions remain your ally rather than your adversary. Over time, your relationship with challenging emotions changes. Fear becomes a prompt for preparation. Disappointment becomes a moment for reflection and adjustment. Anger becomes a call for clarifying boundaries or unspoken truths. Positive emotions evolve too. Joy and excitement become signals that you're moving in the right direction, affirmations that your efforts align with your core values. Rather than fleeting highs, they become markers of momentum. To anchor this transformation, consider one emotion that tends to pull you off course. Maybe it's the wave of self-doubt that hits when you compare yourself to others, or the frustration that flares up every time your plans get delayed. Next time it arises, pause. Label it. Ask yourself what this emotion is communicating about your expectations or needs. Then take one step, physical, mental, or otherwise, that channels this energy into a positive direction. This won't magically solve everything in a single attempt, but it begins a habit. Each instance you do this, you reinforce a new neural pathway that uses emotion as a signal rather than a shackle. Picture how liberating it will be when your emotions become one of your greatest assets. Instead of stalling your efforts, they provide constant feedback and motivation. You'll feel more stable in the face of chaos, more resilient in the face of setbacks, and more attuned to your deepest desires. The next chapter will build on this, focusing on how to shift your very sense of self, so that success is not just something you aim for, but something that becomes natural to you. When you combine emotional mastery with the belief that you are, at your core, capable of greatness, you'll realize that even your biggest ambitions can feel not only feasible, but inevitable. Chapter 6. The Identity Upgrade. If you've ever tried to change a habit, like exercising regularly or waking up earlier, you know how tough it can be to sustain that change. Often, it's because your actions are fighting against your self-image. You might be following a workout plan, but if you still see yourself as not the athletic type, you'll find subtle ways to sabotage your progress. This chapter aims to shift your sense of identity so that what you want to do aligns seamlessly with who you see yourself to be. Identity is like the operating system of your mind. It determines the default settings for your beliefs, your daily routines, and how you respond to challenges. If you identify as someone who rarely takes risks, it won't matter how many opportunities come your way. You'll likely find reasons to say no. Conversely, if you identify as a resourceful individual who thrives on learning, you'll view obstacles as puzzles to solve rather than roadblocks. Thus, upgrading your identity isn't mere self-talk. It's laying a new foundation for consistent action and long-term success. The first step to an identity upgrade is to define the kind of person you want to become. Think beyond external achievements and focus on inherent qualities. For instance, I want to be the kind of person who shows up consistently for my goals, or I want to be the type of person who is calm under pressure. Paint a clear picture of these qualities and attach them to your day-to-day life. Imagine how you would talk, how you would act, and how you would react to both success and failure if you already had these traits. This immersive visualization breaks the mental boundary between your current self and your aspirational self. Next, look for small, meaningful actions that confirm this new identity. If your upgraded identity is a person who stays composed in challenging situations, you might practice a brief breathing exercise whenever tension arises at work. Each time you do this, you reinforce the belief that you are indeed the person you aspire to be. It's vital to make these actions immediately repeatable. Don't wait for a major crisis to prove your composure.
Even small annoyances, like a delay in your schedule or a heated disagreement, provide opportunities to demonstrate your new identity. Another important aspect of identity shift is self-talk. Notice the running commentary in your mind. Are you reinforcing an old identity by saying things like, "I'm always late," or "I can't handle pressure"? Flip these scripts into statements that align with your desired identity, even if you feel like you're stretching the truth at first. Instead of "I'm always late," try "I'm learning to be punctual." When repeated consistently, this subtle shift in language encourages your brain to gather evidence that supports the new narrative. Over time, the new identity begins to feel less like a hopeful claim and more like a lived reality. There's a delicate balance here between aspirational thinking and grounded action. If you declare an identity that's too far removed from your current reality, like insisting "I'm a billionaire business mogul" when you're just starting out, you risk undermining your credibility with yourself. The goal is to find identities that stretch you, but remain believable. Ground them in real behaviors you can practice daily. This balanced approach keeps the upgrade process sustainable and prevents the cynicism that arises when affirmations feel too disconnected from practical experience. You might also consider how environment and community reinforce identity. If you want to see yourself as fit and healthy, surrounding yourself with people who value exercise and good nutrition can help solidify that self-perception. Meanwhile, if you remain in an environment filled with people who dismiss the importance of fitness, it becomes harder to keep your new identity afloat. This doesn't always mean abandoning relationships, but it does mean being strategic about where you spend the majority of your time and energy. Even simple measures like following inspiring voices on social media or joining a supportive online group can tilt your environment in favor of the new identity you're cultivating. As your identity begins to shift, you'll encounter tests, moments that challenge whether you truly believe in this new version of yourself. These tests are valuable because they offer opportunities to reinforce the identity upgrade. For instance, if you've decided you're someone who perseveres through difficulty, the next significant obstacle you face becomes a proving ground. Instead of dreading these tests, welcome them. Each time you respond in a manner consistent with your upgraded identity, you deepen your conviction that this is who I am now. One of the most noticeable changes will be the ease with which you follow through on actions that once felt cumbersome. If part of your new identity is, "I am an organized person," the daily tasks that revolve around planning and tidiness will stop feeling like chores you force yourself to do. Instead, they become natural expressions of your self-image. This shift significantly reduces the mental friction you experience day to day, freeing up energy for higher-level pursuits. A helpful exercise is to keep a journal where you note specific instances of your upgraded identity in action. Maybe you made a thoughtful decision under stress, or maintained a new habit for a full week. Writing these down helps you see the evidence accumulating in real time. It also provides a reservoir of examples you can revisit whenever doubt creeps in. Over time, this journal becomes a testament to your evolving identity, reminding you that you are capable of long-lasting change. As this chapter concludes, reflect on the deeper reason behind your transformation.
Upgrading your identity isn't just about achieving goals more efficiently. It's about living in alignment with the best version of who you can be. When you see yourself as someone who is resourceful, consistent, and worthy of success, it becomes easier to strive for the extraordinary. Every challenge transforms into a stage where you can embody your new identity, each victory further confirming the reality of who you have become. From here, you'll delve into dismantling one of the most persistent barriers people face, the paralyzing pursuit of perfection. By learning to act in spite of flaws and mistakes, you'll accelerate your growth exponentially. Because true mastery isn't about doing everything right the first time. It's about relentless commitment to progress. Chapter 7. Breaking Perfection. There is a moment many of us have experienced. You're eager to start something new, a blog, a fitness regimen, a skill set you've been meaning to learn, but you find yourself waiting for the perfect time, the perfect plan, or the perfect level of readiness. Days turn into weeks, and the grand vision remains locked in your mind. This chapter confronts the illusion of perfection head-on, offering a path toward liberated action that shatters the stagnant grip of, "I must do it flawlessly." Perfectionism masquerades as a virtue, but it's rooted in fear. The fear that any mistake will expose fundamental inadequacies. The trouble is that no matter how diligently you plan or how hard you try, perfection remains out of reach. There's always a new standard, a fresh critique, or an unforeseen variable. Clinging to the ideal of a flawless performance doesn't elevate you. It confines you to a mental prison where you only feel safe taking action if every condition is impeccably controlled. One effective way to break perfectionism is to give yourself permission to create a rough draft of whatever you want to accomplish. If you're writing a book, allow yourself to write badly in the first pass. If you're launching a business, acknowledge that the initial version of your product will have flaws. This might feel like lowering your standards, but in reality, it opens a channel for momentum. You get out of your own way and let the creative process flow, focusing on output rather than obsessing over every detail. This shift from outcome to process is a game changer. It unleashes your capacity to learn and adapt rather than remain stuck in perpetual planning. Another powerful step is to redefine what success means for you. Instead of, "I must produce something flawless," adopt the principle of, "I must produce something that helps me learn." By placing learning and iteration at the core of your standards, you naturally become more resilient to mistakes. A perceived failure is no longer a sign of your incompetence. It's a data point that refines your next effort. This is how tech startups often operate, releasing a minimum viable product and then iterating based on user feedback. You can apply a similar approach to your personal goals. Each attempt becomes a stepping stone, not a final judgment on your capabilities. Imagine you're an aspiring artist. You dream of painting a masterpiece, but spend endless time studying techniques and collecting inspiration, never putting brush to canvas because you're afraid your work won't match your lofty ideals. Now picture yourself grabbing a canvas and painting something unpolished, even messy. You're bound to learn more from that single imperfect painting than from months of theoretical study. With each brushstroke, you discover what works and what doesn't, forging a direct line between practice and insight. Fear of judgment is often tied closely to perfectionism. We imagine others evaluating our every move, highlighting our flaws. In reality, people are typically too absorbed in their own journeys to scrutinize ours in microscopic detail. And even if they do offer criticism, it can be invaluable if we're willing to receive it without equating it to an indictment of our worth. This doesn't mean letting others dictate our self-esteem. It means recognizing that feedback, positive or negative, is another piece of information that can help us improve. Consider a small but transformative challenge. Intentionally release something unfinished to a trusted circle. Perhaps it's the first chapter of your novel or a rough prototype of your product. Let people see the rough edges. The purpose isn't to earn praise, but to practice embracing imperfection publicly. Notice how the world doesn't end. Notice how any critique you receive either stings for a moment or sparks new ideas. This experience proves that imperfection is not a tragedy, but a normal stage in any growth process. As you move beyond the shackles of perfectionism, you'll discover a surprising sense of relief. You're freed from the burden of having to be good enough before you start. Ironically, this freedom can lead to better work, because you can experiment more daringly, unafraid of making mistakes. In the realm of creativity and innovation, those who attempt more fail more, and yet ultimately achieve more. They gather a wealth of experiences that static perfectionists miss out on. You also pave the way for genuine mastery. True masters don't become excellent by seeking flawlessness from day one. They iterate and refine their craft over countless imperfect repetitions. Each version, each practice session, each real-world test offers data that can't be gleaned from theoretical rumination. Mastery thrives in an environment where mistakes are welcomed as part of the learning curve. Remember that perfectionism can re-emerge when stakes feel especially high. If you're about to pitch an investor or show your work to a potential gatekeeper in your industry, that old fear may whisper, "Not yet, you're not ready." This is when you reaffirm your commitment to progress over perfection. You remind yourself that feedback from a real-world experience is worth 1,000 more hours of cautious preparation. That doesn't mean presenting something wholly unprepared. It means recognizing that even thorough preparation can't guarantee a flawless result, and that's okay. To solidify this new mindset, consider creating a track record of what you might call productive imperfections. Keep a brief journal where you list one thing you did imperfectly each day. Maybe you drafted a letter with some awkward phrasing, or you tried a new workout routine and couldn't complete every rep. Note what you learned from the experience. This daily practice trains your brain to interpret imperfection as a natural, fruitful part of your process. Over time, your tolerance for imperfection will rise, and so will your willingness to take bold steps. As you close this chapter, pause and picture a scenario you've been postponing because you're waiting for the perfect moment. It could be a difficult conversation, a creative venture, or a personal risk that feels daunting. Now envision taking action in a raw, unpolished form. See yourself navigating the messiness, gathering insights, and emerging with a clearer sense of what works and what doesn't. Notice how much lighter it feels to move forward instead of waiting for ideal conditions. This is the essence of breaking perfection, converting your visions into living experiments, ready to evolve. Next, you'll direct this spirit of bold, iterative action into the present moment. It's easy to slip into the mindset of later, hoping that future circumstances will be more favorable. But transformation happens now, in real time. The upcoming chapter delves into harnessing the power of immediate action, ensuring you don't just plan for success. You start living it in each choice you make, day by day. Chapter 8. The Power of Now. Think of how often you say, "I'll start tomorrow," "I'll do it when I have more time," or "I'm not quite ready yet." These phrases camouflage procrastination as practicality, giving you a sense of comfort while you delay the very actions that could change your life. The simple truth is that no perfect moment will ever arrive. The power lies in the present, an opportunity that can be seized or squandered with each passing second. Consider the impact of immediate action. When you choose to do something now, whether it's sending a crucial email, starting a workout, or drafting a business plan, you transform potential energy into kinetic energy. The intangible becomes tangible. The swirl of thoughts in your head crystallizes into action steps. This momentum can create a cascading effect. Once you've taken one step, the next becomes easier, and your confidence builds. Even minor actions, when taken promptly, can accumulate into massive achievements over time. Yet many hesitate because taking action now feels risky. After all, as long as the plan remains abstract, it can still be perfect in your mind. Putting it into motion exposes it to critique, potential failure, and the reality that adjustments might be necessary. But it's only by acting in the now that you gather real-world data. For instance, if you're toying with the idea of launching a side hustle, no amount of daydreaming will compare to the insights you'll gain from actually speaking with potential customers or testing the market. Even if the initial steps aren't flashy successes, they become valuable lessons that refine your approach. One effective approach to harnessing the power of now is to create immediacy triggers. These are simple, often physical cues that propel you into action. For example, if you want to exercise first thing in the morning, place your workout clothes next to your bed. The moment you wake up, you see them, and that visual trigger nudges you to get moving before you have time to talk yourself out of it. The key is to lower the activation energy required so that starting becomes almost automatic. If you apply this principle across multiple areas of your life, work tasks, personal development, relationships, you eliminate the friction that leads to perpetual postponement. Another tactic is to set micro-deadlines. Instead of saying, "I'll write a chapter of my book by the end of the month," say, "I'll write 200 words in the next hour." This small, time-bound commitment forces you to act immediately, removing the psychological escape hatch of indefinite future planning. When the hour is up, you have tangible progress. You can repeat this process multiple times a day, swiftly turning your lofty goal into a series of achievable steps. This practice also diminishes overwhelm because you're focusing on what you can do right now rather than the intimidating breadth of the entire project. Realize, too, that now isn't only about external actions. It's also about psychological readiness. You might think you need more confidence or clarity before you can proceed. But often, confidence and clarity are byproducts of action. For instance, if you start practicing public speaking today, even with a small audience or a simple video recording for yourself, you'll gain insights that turbocharge your confidence. Waiting to feel ready is a trap, because readiness is rarely a prerequisite for bold action. It's more often the result. Picture the difference between two versions of you, one who consistently acts on ideas and one who chronically waits. Over 6 months, the waiter might still be refining plans, grappling with doubts, and searching for the perfect time. Meanwhile, the doer has already iterated through several versions of their idea, learned from mistakes, and likely produced visible outcomes. This gap widens exponentially. Acting now multiplies opportunities, while waiting for ideal conditions often means you'll never find them. Procrastination frequently hides behind the rationalization that later will be better. Maybe you tell yourself you'll have more money, time, or skill in the future, but conditions rarely improve without the impetus of immediate action. By acting now, you set a process in motion that can generate the very resources and growth you believed you needed beforehand. It's the classic paradox of waiting to invest in yourself until you have enough, only to realize that investing in yourself now is often how you get to that place of having enough in the first place. If you find yourself stuck, adopt the 10-minute rule. Commit to 10 minutes of focused work on whatever task you've been postponing. After 10 minutes, you're free to stop if you really want to. Most people discover that once they begin, the initial resistance melts away, and they continue well beyond the 10-minute mark. This small mental trick proves you can access the power of now with minimal commitment, and it often catalyzes far more action than anticipated. In your daily life, watch for micro moments where you can exercise immediacy. Maybe it's responding to an email you've been avoiding, or speaking up in a meeting instead of mentally rehearsing what you'd say. Over time, these micro actions accumulate. You become someone who acts swiftly and decisively, a person who doesn't leave crucial moves to chance or indefinite planning. This shift builds your self-trust. You learn that you can rely on yourself to seize opportunities rather than letting them slip by. As we reach the end of this chapter, think about a single action you've been putting off, something that, if done today, would inch you closer to a significant goal. It might be a short phone call, a written outline, or a personal conversation you've been dreading. Commit to doing it as soon as you finish listening. Feel the surge of energy as you decide it's no longer a future aspiration, but a present reality. That feeling is the essence of the power of now. In the next chapter, we'll look deeper into how you might unknowingly sabotage your own efforts and how to dismantle these patterns once and for all. Chapter 9. Dismantling self-sabotage. You set a goal, craft a plan, and even take the first few steps with passion. Then, inexplicably, your motivation fizzles. You lose focus, get entangled in distractions, or suddenly decide that maybe the goal wasn't that important after all. This maddening cycle is self-sabotage, a stealthy mechanism where you derail your own success, often without fully realizing why. At the core of self-sabotage is a desire for psychological safety. By undermining your progress, you maintain familiarity and avoid the unknown. Success can be just as frightening as failure because it carries expectations and responsibilities. If you've ever caught yourself thinking, What if I can't maintain this success once I achieve it? You've glimpsed the hidden rationale behind self-sabotage. On some level, staying in your comfort zone feels safer than navigating the unfamiliar territory of an upgraded life. The first step to dismantling self-sabotage is to understand its emotional payoff. Whenever you sabotage your efforts, by procrastinating, overspending, or picking unnecessary fights, you gain something. Maybe temporary relief from pressure, or a justification to remain within your comfort zone. By identifying this payoff, you can see self-sabotage as a misguided attempt at self-protection rather than pure self-destructiveness. It's an outdated strategy your mind uses to spare you from perceived threats like judgment, failure, or the weight of new responsibilities. Now ask yourself, what am I protecting by staying here? The answer might be, my sense of being in control, or my fear of disappointing others if I reach too high. Once you articulate what you're clinging to, consider healthier ways to address that underlying concern. If fear of judgment holds you back, look for supportive communities or mentors who can offer constructive feedback rather than harsh criticism. If fear of new responsibilities is the issue, break them down into manageable steps, proving to yourself that increased responsibility can be handled incrementally. Self-sabotage often operates in subtle, cumulative ways. An hour lost scrolling through social media here, a missed deadline there. Each individual act seems harmless, but collectively they form a pattern that halts your progress. Combat this by tracking your behaviors, especially in areas you suspect sabotage. For instance, if you're trying to write a book, note exactly how you spend your writing hours. Do you drift into research tangents or social media? Awareness is half the battle. Once you see the pattern, you can implement barriers, like blocking distracting websites or scheduling your writing time in a focused environment. Another strategy is to revisit your deeper motives. When you lose sight of why your goal matters, self-sabotage finds fertile ground. Perhaps your original desire to start a business was fueled by a dream of financial freedom and the wish to provide for your family. Over time, that emotional spark might dim as you face daily challenges. By regularly reconnecting with the core reasons for your pursuit, visualizing the impact on your loved ones or the personal growth you'll experience, you re-energize your commitment. Self-sabotage struggles to take root in a mind that's deeply engaged with its purpose. You should also address any hidden belief that you don't deserve success. This can stem from childhood experiences, cultural messages, or internalized criticisms. Whenever you notice self-defeating thoughts like, "Who am I to do this?" or "I'm not worthy of this level of achievement," challenge them. You might compile a list of your past achievements or the positive impacts you've had on others. This evidence-based approach helps dismantle the false narrative that you're somehow unfit for the success you desire. It's worth noting that self-sabotage can spike just as you're on the verge of a breakthrough, sometimes called an upper limit problem. This occurs when you surpass your subconscious threshold for how much success, joy, or abundance you believe you can handle. Suddenly, you create drama or crises that pull you back below that threshold. Recognizing this pattern lets you pause in those pivotal moments and ask, am I creating chaos because I feel uncomfortable with how well things are going? That realization alone can diffuse the cycle, allowing you to expand your sense of what's possible. When you see self-sabotage coming, one effective countermeasure is to replace the sabotage behavior with a coping mechanism that addresses the same emotional need. For instance, if you typically derail your progress by binge-watching shows to escape stress, find a healthier form of stress relief, like a brief meditation, a walk, or a conversation with a supportive friend. The key is to satisfy the underlying need, relief from pressure, without demolishing your goal. Over time, these replacement behaviors become your new default, and self-sabotage loses its grip. A powerful exercise is to identify one project or area of life where you suspect self-sabotage most. Write a short letter to yourself explaining why you're afraid of succeeding in that area. Let your honest fears surface. I'm afraid I won't live up to new expectations, or I'm afraid I'll lose touch with friends if I become more successful. Read this letter back to yourself. This process can feel uncomfortable, but it shines a light on the real obstacles in your path. Once named, they become problems you can address rather than vague, unnamed dread controlling your decisions. Ultimately, dismantling self-sabotage is about learning to feel safe as you evolve. It's an internal agreement you make with yourself, granting permission to grow without guilt or fear. As you take consistent action, you'll prove to your subconscious that success isn't a threat. You'll adapt to new heights of achievement, expanding your comfort zone so that what once seemed intimidating becomes routine. At this stage, you've confronted your cage, learned to observe your thoughts, rewired your fear, aligned your desires, managed your emotions, upgraded your identity, broken perfectionism, seized the present, and exposed the patterns of self-sabotage. Next, it's time to transform adversity itself into your greatest asset. Because no matter how well you plan or how diligently you work, obstacles will arise. The question is whether those obstacles will stop you or become the fuel that propels you to an even higher level of success. Chapter 10. Mindset Alchemy. Life throws challenges at everyone. A health crisis, a financial setback, a lost opportunity. In these moments, it's tempting to conclude that luck isn't on your side or that you're simply not cut out for success. But what if you could turn every setback into fuel for growth, converting adversity into a catalyst for transformation? That's the essence of mindset alchemy, transmuting the lead of hardship into the gold of higher resilience and deeper wisdom. The core shift here is the realization that events are neutral. It's your interpretation that assigns them positive or negative value. Consider two entrepreneurs whose launches flop. One sees it as a personal failure, a sign that business is not for them. They give up. The other sees the flop as an experiment that yielded valuable lessons about market demands. They pivot, incorporate the feedback, and relaunch with improved offerings. The external event, a launch flop, is the same, but the interpretation differs, producing vastly different outcomes. Start by examining your default reactions to adversity. Do you label yourself a failure? Do you blame external factors? Do you wallow in self-pity or resentment? These responses are understandable but unproductive if they become your only narrative. Challenge that narrative. When something goes wrong, ask, "What is this trying to teach me?" Or, "How can I use this to become stronger, smarter, or more adaptable?" At first, this may feel forced, especially if you're hurt or disappointed. Over time, however, the practice reshapes how your mind handles stress. Your default setting shifts to problem-solving and self-improvement rather than self-defeat. One practical method is to perform a post-mortem on each setback. Write down precisely what happened, why it happened, and what you can learn. Maybe you launched a product without thoroughly testing the market, or you joined a partnership without establishing clear boundaries. Identify what you can do differently next time. This process transforms vague regret into a plan for forward motion. It keeps you from repeating the same mistakes and helps you realize you have more influence over outcomes than you might initially believe. Even emotional pain can be alchemized. Suppose a relationship or friendship you depended on falls apart. The instinct might be to close yourself off or deny the sadness. But emotional mastery, from a previous chapter, reminds us to feel our emotions fully and seek their lessons. Reflect on what the experience reveals about your values, communication style, or boundaries. Use it to refine how you approach relationships in the future. While the hurt remains real, it also becomes a stepping stone to a wiser, more authentic version of yourself. A critical aspect of mindset alchemy is maintaining perspective. It's easy to exaggerate a setback's scope, believing it negates all your progress. Develop the habit of zooming out, imagining yourself 3 years from now looking back on this event. Will it be a defining moment of total defeat, or a challenging chapter that led to important growth? By stepping beyond the immediacy of pain or frustration, you invite a calmer, more solution-oriented perspective. This approach also lessens the emotional charge that can lock you into a defeatist mindset. There's also power in leveraging past successes when faced with current difficulties. Recall times you overcame obstacles, even if they were entirely different in nature. Let those memories remind you of your capacity to adapt and bounce back. By anchoring in previous wins, you prove to your mind that you're not a stranger to resilience. This mental reference point is crucial when adversity clouds your vision, making every possible solution seem out of reach. Mindset alchemy doesn't mean ignoring real limitations. Some obstacles, like a health condition or an economic downturn, aren't solely a matter of perspective. But even in these challenging scenarios, your attitude can drastically shape how effectively you respond. You might need to adapt your goals, pivot to a new strategy, or ask for help. Your willingness to see adversity as a nudge toward a different path, rather than an impassable roadblock, often makes the difference between stagnation and growth. A potent exercise to solidify this shift is to adopt a gratitude perspective even when things go wrong. Ask yourself, what can I be grateful for in this situation? Maybe the setback highlights a supportive friend or a hidden skill you hadn't realized you possessed. Gratitude doesn't negate pain or frustration. It contextualizes them, reminding you that not everything is lost and that you still have resources to rebuild. This balanced stance prevents negativity from turning into despair. Over time, practicing mindset alchemy can turn you into a person who welcomes challenges, because you've seen firsthand how they can catapult you to new heights of competence and inner strength. This isn't Pollyannish optimism. It's a grounded resilience that recognizes the ups and downs of life yet remains confident that you can extract value from every experience. Such resilience is magnetic. People notice your capacity to rebound and often want to align with you, whether in professional collaborations or personal friendships. As you near the end of this chapter, think of a recent obstacle that discouraged you. Reflect on what you learned from it, or what you can still learn if you shift your perspective. Imagine yourself drawing a circle around that setback, labeling it raw material, and then brainstorming ways to transform it into wisdom, skill, or strategy. This is the essence of alchemy, turning what appears to be worthless into something profoundly valuable. Next, you'll harness the power of influence, both the environment you operate in and the relationships that shape your thinking. When you combine a resilient, alchemical mindset with a carefully chosen environment, you create a feedback loop that continuously fuels your growth. Get ready to take control of the influences around you, so they align with the unstoppable transformation taking root inside. Chapter 11. Intentional Influence. Pause for a moment and consider the spaces and people that fill your daily life. Your workspace, your home, your circle of friends, colleagues, and mentors. Each exerts a subtle but persistent pull on your thoughts and actions. If you're surrounded by clutter and negativity, you'll feel weighed down, fighting an uphill battle to maintain a positive outlook. Conversely, if you cultivate an environment that reflects your aspirations and a community that believes in growth, you'll find yourself propelled forward almost effortlessly. This chapter centers on intentional influence, the deliberate shaping of your surroundings and relationships to support your newly rewired mind. It builds upon the idea that internal transformations are bolstered by external scaffolding. Even the most disciplined mindset can weaken if it's constantly subjected to disempowering environments. Conversely, a nurturing environment can amplify and stabilize all the internal work you've accomplished so far. Begin with your physical space. Whether it's a corner of a studio apartment or a sprawling office, look around and ask, does this space reflect who I want to become? If the answer is no, identify simple changes. Maybe you need better lighting or a dedicated area for creative work. Clearing clutter can also have a dramatic psychological impact, signaling to your mind that you're making room for new possibilities. Small symbols of your aspirations, a vision board, a quote that resonates with your journey, can keep you aligned when daily challenges threaten to derail you. Next, evaluate the digital environment you interact with. Many of us spend hours scrolling through social media feeds filled with trivial content or negative commentary. If your social media environment is saturated with cynicism or comparison traps, it can drag you down. Curate your feeds to include people and pages that inspire or educate you. Be mindful of notifications that steal your focus and mood throughout the day. This isn't about living in an echo chamber. It's about being deliberate so that the information you consume nudges you toward growth instead of draining your energy. Now consider the human element. Your friends, colleagues, and mentors play an enormous role in shaping your beliefs about what's possible. Are you surrounded by people who reinforce your old limitations or question your every new idea? Or do you have allies who challenge you to grow, celebrate your wins, and help you reframe setbacks? Creating a supportive circle can require tough choices. You may need to limit interactions with chronically negative individuals, or at least set boundaries that protect your mental space. Seek out communities aligned with your goals. Meetup groups, professional organizations, or online forums. The momentum you gain from being around driven, optimistic individuals often exceeds what you could generate on your own. Intentional influence also extends to the content you consume: books, podcasts, films, and so forth. These mediums can provide ongoing education, motivation, and fresh perspectives. When combined with a supportive social circle, they create a multi-layered ecosystem that continually reinforces your new identity. Think of it as immersive learning, where every facet of your environment is a teacher. Be cautious not to use networking as a superficial tactic. Look instead for genuine connections founded on shared values. When you meet someone who inspires you, show up with curiosity and a willingness to offer help or insight. Authentic relationships flourish when both parties see each other not as instruments for personal gain, but as partners in a shared journey of growth. Over time, these partnerships can open doors to opportunities you never knew existed. Another pivotal element of intentional influence is modeling. Identify a role model, someone who embodies the qualities or achievements you aspire to. Study not just their successes, but also their struggles and how they navigated them. Even if you never meet them in person, analyzing their trajectory can offer valuable lessons. The point isn't to copy them exactly, but to adapt their mindset and strategies to your context. This external reference can speed up your learning curve and keep you inspired. As you refine your environment and circle, it's natural to experience growing pains. People who are comfortable with the old version of you might resist or mock your newfound aspirations. You might feel guilty about spending less time with certain friends or changing old habits. This discomfort is part of the process. Your social environment is adjusting to the fact that you're not standing still. Honor the relationships that matter to you, but also honor your commitment to growth. Over time, genuine friends will respect and possibly even join your journey. Observe the cumulative effect of these influences. You may notice that your off days become less frequent, or at least less severe, because your environment and community buffer you against lapses in motivation. Tasks that once felt monumental become more manageable when you see others in your circle tackling similar challenges. Conversations spark new ideas instead of reinforcing old cynicism. Each of these shifts might seem small, but collectively they sculpt a life trajectory that's oriented toward continuous progress. Before you wrap up this chapter, pick one aspect of your environment, physical space, digital life, or social circle, that most urgently needs an upgrade. Maybe it's the workspace that's perpetually cluttered, or the chat group that's always complaining. Decide on a single, concrete step to address it this week: rearranging your workspace, curating your social media follow list, or reducing contact with a consistently negative acquaintance. This one action can spark a broader transformation as you experience firsthand the powerful ripple effect of aligning your environment with your aspirations. Next, you'll delve into establishing habits that make success a consistent, almost automatic outcome. By synchronizing your internal transformations with external routines, you'll find that what once required enormous willpower begins to flow with remarkable ease. This synergy between your internal mindset and external practices will accelerate the pace of your evolution even further. Chapter 12. The Success Habit Loop. Habits are the autopilot of human behavior, guiding actions without requiring conscious thought. This can be both a curse and a blessing. Destructive habits can lock you in negative cycles, while constructive ones can propel you effortlessly toward your goals. Now that you've worked diligently to realign your mindset and environment, it's time to harness the power of habit formation, ensuring that each day moves you closer to your vision. Consider an example. Suppose you want to read more personal development books but find yourself consistently distracted by social media. You might start by setting a daily micro goal: read 5 pages before checking your phone in the morning. Over time, as this becomes second nature, you increase it to 10 pages and so on. The essential element is to trigger the behavior with something you already do habitually: waking up. The moment you rise, you see the book on your nightstand, so you naturally pick it up before defaulting to your phone. This seamless integration is the hallmark of an effective habit loop. To build a successful habit, you typically need 3 elements: a cue, a routine, and a reward. The cue is the signal that triggers the behavior, the routine is the behavior itself, and the reward is the positive outcome that follows. For instance, if you want to develop the habit of exercising after work, your cue could be the moment you close your laptop. The routine is your exercise session, and the reward could be a healthy snack or even just the internal satisfaction of completing a workout. Over time, your brain begins to associate finishing work with the immediate next step of exercise, and you find yourself lacing up your sneakers almost automatically. But what if motivation ebbs or life circumstances disrupt your routine? That's where habit resilience comes into play. Design your habits to be flexible enough that you can scale them down without abandoning them entirely. If you're traveling and can't do your full workout, do a shorter version in your hotel room. This keeps the habit alive rather than letting it break. Consistency is king. Even a minimal version of the habit retains the identity of someone who never misses a workout, sustaining the psychological momentum you've built. Remember, habits aren't solely about efficiency. They're also about reinforcing your chosen identity. When you consistently follow through on small yet meaningful actions, like journaling daily or practicing a musical instrument, the repetition sends a powerful message to your subconscious. I am someone who honors my commitments. And this becomes self-reinforcing because it feels incongruent to skip what you identify as a non-negotiable part of who you are. Be mindful of your reward system. If the reward is too distant or abstract, it won't be as effective. For instance, if your goal is weight loss, the number on the scale might move too slowly to keep you motivated daily. Instead, focus on immediate, intrinsic rewards. You might savor the endorphin rush post-workout or track personal strength gains. External rewards, like a small treat or a moment of relaxation, can also work as long as they don't undermine your ultimate goal. For instance, rewarding a great workout with a healthy smoothie is better aligned than rewarding it with a junk food binge. Habits don't exist in isolation. They form a network, often referred to as habit stacking. Once you have one positive habit established, link a new habit to it. If you've already built a routine of reading in the morning, you could stack a 5-minute meditation session immediately after. This chaining effect uses the momentum from an established routine to power the formation of another. Over time, your daily schedule becomes a sequence of growth-oriented habits, each cueing the next in a seamless flow. Breaking old, destructive habits is equally crucial. Start by identifying the cue and the payoff you gain from the negative behavior. If you always snack late at night, is the cue boredom or a drop in blood sugar? Is the payoff temporary relief from stress? By pinpointing these elements, you can replace the routine with a healthier option that still addresses the underlying need. Maybe you take a brief walk or sip herbal tea when boredom strikes, or you plan a more balanced dinner to stabilize your energy levels. The secret is to satisfy the same craving with a more constructive habit. It's normal to slip up occasionally. The key is to see a lapse as a data point rather than an invitation to quit. If you miss a day of writing or a workout, evaluate why. Were you overwhelmed? Did you not prepare adequately? Use the insight to refine your system. Maybe you need to schedule workouts earlier in the day or keep a writing notebook at your desk. Each slip is an opportunity to strengthen the habit loop rather than abandon it. This adaptive mindset keeps you in the game long enough for lasting change to take root. Over time, your habit loops become the backbone of your success. You no longer rely solely on willpower or fleeting motivation. Instead, you operate from an internal system that steadily propels you forward. This frees up mental and emotional bandwidth for creativity, problem-solving, and higher-level strategizing. Rather than fighting an internal battle every time you have to do something beneficial, you glide through your day with a sense of flow. Take a moment now to identify a key habit you want to instill that aligns with your bigger goals. Maybe it's consistent writing sessions, daily language practice, or regular outreach to potential clients. Pinpoint a cue in your existing routine, plan a simple version of the habit, and choose a reward that resonates. Write this down. Even if you don't implement it perfectly right away, you've taken the essential step of designing a habit loop to set you up for success. In the next chapter, you'll explore how to make bold decisions under uncertain conditions, an area where your new habit of consistent progress will serve you especially well, because greatness often hinges on making the right call when everything feels uncertain. Chapter 13. Courageous Decisions. You stand at a crossroads, confronting a pivotal choice that could redefine your life. Perhaps it's about switching careers, relocating to a new city, or ending a stagnant relationship. The weight of this decision presses down, and uncertainty swirls. You may find yourself collecting endless advice, analyzing every possible outcome, or delaying the choice indefinitely. And yet, the power of bold decisions lies precisely in acting before you're 100% sure. This chapter centers on cultivating the courage to decide when outcomes are unknown. It builds on everything you've learned about fear, self-belief, and mindset. At its core, courageous decision-making requires trust. Trust in your ability to adapt, to learn, and to thrive, even if the choice you make doesn't yield the exact result you imagined. A good place to start is to identify the cost of inaction. People often overlook the silent toll of remaining stuck. Ask yourself, what happens if I don't change anything? Sometimes, the status quo is more dangerous than any risk you might take. You might stagnate in a job that erodes your passion, or stay in a comfort zone that robs you of the growth you could experience. Recognizing these hidden costs can be the nudge you need to commit to a decision that feels scary, but also full of possibility. Another tool is to gather just enough information to make a reasoned choice, but no more. Overanalysis can paralyze you. Once you have a reasonable understanding of your options, set a decision deadline. Mark it on your calendar or declare it to someone you trust for accountability. When the deadline arrives, make the call. This disciplined approach cuts off the endless loop of what-if scenarios that keep you from moving forward. And if new information arises that truly changes the game, you can adapt. But at least you're acting rather than perpetually waiting. Acknowledge that any decision entails uncertainty. Even well-informed choices can lead to unexpected outcomes. The real advantage of courageous decision-making is that it propels you into action, generating valuable feedback. If the result is favorable, fantastic, you gain momentum. If it's not, you learn rapidly, giving you a head start on your next move. In contrast, endless deliberation yields no lessons, no feedback, and no progress. Don't underestimate the power of your intuition in this process. Intuition is more than a hunch. It's the sum of your experiences, knowledge, and subconscious pattern recognition. While it's not infallible, it can guide you when logic alone doesn't provide clarity. Listen to that subtle gut feeling. Does the thought of moving forward feel enlivening despite the fear? Or does it instill a sense of dread that goes beyond ordinary nerves? The nuance here is learning to distinguish between anxiety rooted in fear of the unknown and a deeper sense that this decision conflicts with your core values. Honing this skill requires practice, but it can be a powerful ally. When you finally decide, commit fully. Partial commitment leads to half-hearted actions and muddled results. If you resolve to embark on a new career path, throw your energy into building the skills and connections you need. If you decide to relocate, invest time in acclimating to the new environment. Full commitment doesn't mean you can't adjust your course. It means you enter the arena wholeheartedly, open to learning from whatever unfolds. This level of engagement accelerates your growth exponentially. It's also wise to cultivate a failure hedge, a fallback plan that ensures you won't be completely devastated if things go awry. This isn't about doom and gloom thinking. It's about creating enough stability or savings so that you can pivot if your bold choice doesn't pan out. A failure hedge often reduces your stress, making it easier to commit fully because you know you're not gambling everything on one roll of the dice. The key is to avoid letting your hedge become an excuse to hold back. It's there to support your courage, not to replace it. One practical exercise is to imagine two futures, one in which you never muster the courage to make the decision, and one in which you do. Visualize your life in both scenarios in detail, the daily routine, the emotional landscape, the relationships you foster or neglect. Which future resonates with the person you want to become? Often, simply seeing how drastically different these futures feel can clarify which choice aligns with your core values. It might still be scary, but it's a fear tinged with excitement rather than regret. As you embrace courageous decisions, you'll notice a shift in how you handle smaller choices. Even the everyday stuff, like how you spend your free time or whether you address a minor conflict, becomes an opportunity to practice decisiveness and authenticity. Over time, you develop a reputation with yourself for being someone who doesn't shy away from the big calls. That self-trust is priceless, fueling further leaps in your personal and professional life. By the end of this chapter, let your mind settle on one significant decision you've been putting off. Feel the uncertainty in your gut, but also feel the spark of possibility. Ask yourself the crucial question: what's the true cost of doing nothing? Then set a clear, near-term deadline for choosing a path. Commit to that timeline and trust yourself to handle the consequences. This is how you carve out a life defined by active creation rather than passive avoidance. Next, you'll explore the idea of flow states, a powerful zone where action feels almost effortless and your performance soars. When you combine the courage to decide with the ability to enter a state of deep focus, you open the door to achievements that once seemed out of reach. The synergy between brave choices and optimal performance unlocks new levels of success and satisfaction in everything you do. Chapter 14. The Flow State Pathway. Think back to a time when you were engrossed in a task, maybe playing a musical instrument, coding a program, or engaging in a competitive sport. Minutes, even hours, seemed to vanish, and you emerged from the experience both energized and surprised by your level of performance. This mental zone, often referred to as a flow state, is where the conscious mind and the unconscious mind align perfectly. Actions become almost instinctual, and distractions fade into the background. Achieving flow isn't just a pleasant experience. It can amplify creativity, productivity, and overall satisfaction. The key is to set up the right conditions. Flow typically arises when you're deeply engaged in an activity that's challenging yet matched to your skill level. If the challenge is too high, anxiety ensues. If it's too low, boredom creeps in. Thus, the first step to finding flow is choosing tasks that stretch you but remain attainable, a dynamic equilibrium often referred to as the flow channel. Timing and environment also matter. You're more likely to sink into flow when you block off uninterrupted periods, free from constant alerts and random interruptions. It helps if you can work in a space that reduces distractions, a quiet room, noise-canceling headphones, or even a busy cafe if that setting inspires focused immersion for you. Flow is elusive when your brain is bombarded by pings, calls, or a cluttered workspace. Curate your environment so you can dive deep without the friction of frequent disturbance. Before starting, clarify your goal. Flow thrives on clear objectives. If you're writing, decide on the section or word count you want to achieve. If you're designing a project, define the specific milestone you want to hit. This focus narrows your attention to the immediate task. Ambiguity about your end goal can cause your mind to drift, diluting the intensity you need for flow. Once you begin, immerse yourself fully. It often takes several minutes to break through the surface noise of your mind, so patience is key. Resist the urge to check your phone or email just for a second, because even a small interruption can pull you out of flow and force you to start over. Instead, let yourself settle into the task. If you feel internal resistance, remind yourself that it's just your brain adjusting to a state of deep focus after being habituated to quick distractions. Another factor that fosters flow is immediate feedback. This doesn't always mean external feedback. For a writer, seeing the words form on the page can suffice. For a musician, hearing the notes is immediate feedback. For a coder, seeing the program run without errors, or debugging them, offers quick responses. This feedback loop engages your brain in continuous improvement, strengthening the sense of progress that keeps you hooked in the present moment. Flow also benefits from an optimal level of mental arousal. If you're overly stressed, you'll struggle to maintain focus. If you're too relaxed, you won't enter the heightened state. Small rituals can help you find the sweet spot. Maybe a brief walk, some light stretching, or a mindfulness exercise before you start. Experiment with what best elevates your mental energy to a point of calm yet alert engagement. Ironically, The more you chase flow directly, the more elusive it can become.
The best approach is to design conditions that invite flow and then let the experience take over naturally. Think of it as creating a stage upon which flow can perform, rather than micromanaging every cue and step. Over time, as you practice these conditions, challenging tasks, minimal distractions, clear goals, you'll increase the frequency and reliability of entering flow. When you do find yourself in that sweet spot, ride it out as long as you can, but also stay attuned to your energy levels.
Flow can be taxing, and there's a point of diminishing returns when fatigue creeps in. Recognize your natural rhythms. Some people find they achieve flow most consistently in the early morning, while others hit their stride late at night. Aligning your hardest tasks with your peak mental phases can make entering flow more natural. Exiting a flow state gracefully can also influence your next session. Take a moment to reflect on what you accomplished and how you felt. A quick note in a journal or a mental recap can solidify the lessons learned or spark ideas for the next session. This brief cool-down preserves the momentum, making it easier to re-enter flow when you return to the task. Integrating flow into your life isn't just about productivity. It's a gateway to heightened fulfillment. The sense of mastery, the fading away of self-consciousness, and the merging of action and awareness can inject joy into tasks that might otherwise feel routine. It also stands as a testament to your capacity to focus and excel when conditions are right, reinforcing your evolving identity as someone who makes bold choices and then executes them with skillful intensity. Now pick one task this week that you'd like to approach with a flow mindset. Set aside a block of time, minimize distractions, clearly define your objective, and gauge your challenge level. Give yourself space to slip into deep concentration. Whether or not you achieve a perfect flow state, the discipline of creating these conditions will move you a step closer to harnessing this remarkable phenomenon regularly. As you proceed to the final chapter, you'll bring together all these elements: rewired beliefs, emotional mastery, supportive environments, resilient habits, courageous decisions, and the power of flow into a unified perspective. The culmination is more than just a set of skills. It's a way of being, an embodiment of greatness you'll carry forward beyond these pages, shaping not only your trajectory, but also the lives of those around you. Chapter 15. Owning Your Greatness. You've come a long way, from exposing the invisible cage of limiting beliefs to learning how to transmute obstacles into growth. From confronting fear head-on to building habits that make success feel natural. Each chapter has served as a stepping stone, offering insights to rewire your brain for achievement. Now it's time to integrate all these lessons into the final transformation, accepting that you are inherently designed for greatness and acting from that truth each day. Owning your greatness doesn't mean boasting or declaring superiority over others. It means recognizing the unique combination of strengths, perspectives, and potential that make you capable of extraordinary impact. This recognition isn't ego-driven. It's grounded in an honest assessment of what you bring to the table, coupled with a willingness to continuously evolve. When you embrace your greatness, you see it as a responsibility to live fully, to contribute, and to keep pushing the boundaries of your potential. The first step is to relinquish any lingering belief that greatness is reserved for a select few. Reflect on how many so-called ordinary people have achieved extraordinary feats. Their journeys often start with an inkling of possibility, nurtured by persistent action. You've spent this entire process rewiring your mind for exactly that: persistent, growth-oriented action. Stop wondering if you deserve to step up. Instead, ask yourself how you can best use the gifts you've uncovered. Notice how each lesson ties back to this ultimate acceptance. Recognizing thoughts as mere mental events frees you from self-doubt. Rewiring fear allows you to face challenges as stepping stones. Emotional mastery keeps you grounded, helping you avoid the roller coaster of fleeting moods. Aligning your desires with belief erases the inner conflicts that slow you down. Viewing setbacks as raw material transforms adversity into leverage. Surrounding yourself with supportive influences keeps your new mindset flourishing. Habits and flow keep you consistently moving forward. And making courageous decisions cements your identity as someone who acts with purpose, not passivity. Owning your greatness also involves acknowledging the ripple effect you create. When you step fully into your capabilities, you inspire others to do the same. Your transformed attitude, heightened resilience, and unwavering determination become a beacon, especially for those who've watched you evolve. This isn't about impressing people. It's about reflecting the possibility within them. Each person you touch may be galvanized to examine their own life, question their own limits, and rise above them. However, being great doesn't entail being flawless. You'll still make mistakes, face disappointments, and occasionally battle moments of self-doubt. Owning your greatness means you don't let these hiccups define you. Instead, you bounce back more quickly, applying the principles you've integrated: introspection, recalibration, and renewed action. This resilient adaptability is part of the essence of greatness. It's what separates those who wither under setbacks from those who use them as fuel. To anchor this shift, engage in a simple yet powerful exercise of self-acknowledgement. Write down 3 qualities or achievements you're proud of, be it your perseverance in a tough situation, a creative solution you devised, or a risk you took despite fear. Then, list 3 future scenarios you can see yourself thriving in if you bring those same qualities to bear. When you visualize this future, feel the sense of certainty that arises from knowing you already have the tools within you. This act of self-recognition crystallizes your awareness of who you are becoming. A key aspect of owning your greatness is the willingness to think bigger. When the "I can't" voice has been replaced by "I can learn how," the realm of possibility expands dramatically. You might revisit old dreams you once shelved or conceive entirely new ambitions you never dared consider. Embrace the uncomfortable excitement that comes with venturing onto a larger stage, whether that's a metaphorical stage of leadership in your community or an actual public platform. By scaling your vision, you stay true to the expanded version of yourself you've cultivated. Another dimension of greatness is contribution. Ask yourself how your unique blend of talents and experiences can solve a problem or fill a gap in the world. This doesn't have to be grandiose. Even small acts of service that align with your strengths can have profound effects. When you harness your greatness for a purpose larger than your own self-interest, you anchor your journey in meaning that sustains you through inevitable ups and downs. Contribution also cements your place in a larger tapestry, reminding you that personal growth and collective impact go hand in hand. As you stand on the threshold of the next chapter of your life, consider how you'll keep these lessons alive. Perhaps you'll set reminders or revisit chapters that particularly resonated. Maybe you'll share insights with someone close to you, reinforcing your own learning while aiding their growth. Or you might create a personal manifesto, summarizing the core shifts you've embraced, such as seeing fear as a guide, breaking perfectionism with action, and approaching decisions with confidence. This manifesto becomes your lighthouse in stormy times, calling you back to the foundational truths you've worked so diligently to internalize. Ultimately, you will know you've fully embraced your greatness when taking bold, growth-oriented actions becomes as natural as breathing. You won't be content with idle dreaming. You'll feel pulled to create, to lead, to innovate. And when challenges arise, and they surely will, you'll meet them with curiosity, resilience, and a sense of possibility. Because greatness isn't a destination. It's a way of moving through the world, an energy that can't be extinguished by any single setback. Thank you for allowing this journey to be part of your transformation. You hold in your hands, indeed, in your very mind, the keys to a new level of existence. The question now is simple. How will you use them? Will you turn them in the lock of a door you never thought you could open? Will you dare to expand your vision of what's possible? The choice, as it has been all along, remains beautifully and powerfully yours. May you walk forward from here not as someone who hopes to succeed, but as someone who already knows how, and who claims that success as a natural extension of who they are.